Hello there, what a peaceful night this is, isn't it? The sky outside your window might be draped in the deep blue of late evening, with distant stars twinkling like tiny gems. A gentle breeze flows through the tree branches, creating soft rustling sounds, mixed with the distant sounds of life, perhaps the quiet hum of passing cars, or soft laughter and conversation from somewhere nearby. Tonight, I want to take you back to a very distant era, the medieval period, where people had completely different sleep habits and nighttime routines than we do today. The stories I'm about to tell are all true, documented in historical records, yet they sound like strange fairy tales. Before we begin, don't forget to click subscribe the channel so that we can meet every night. And then, let's create a truly comfortable space for yourself. Adjust your bedside lamp to a warm, golden glow, switch your fan or air conditioning to a gentle setting, and set your air purifier to quiet mode. If you'd like, light a lavender-scented candle or diffuse some essential oils to make the space even more relaxing. Then slowly climb into bed, pull up your warm blanket, and gently close your eyes. Tonight, we'll explore the secrets of medieval sleep. From sleeping in two separate sessions during the night to strange beds, how people dealt with insects, sharing beds with strangers, bedtime prayers, and many other fascinating details. If you enjoy gentle historical stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can explore more intriguing aspects of the past together. Now, let your soul relax and begin our journey back to ancient times. Have you ever heard about the word two-phase sleep? Yep, that's the natural rhythm of our ancestors. Are you feeling comfortable in the cozy space around you? I hope the gentle lamplight and pure fragrance are helping you relax. Let me take you to a winter night in 1347, in a small village in northern England. I am William, a farmer in the village of Ashworth. Outside our small thatched cottage, the northeast wind blows across empty fields, carrying the bone-chilling cold of an English winter. Gray clouds cover the sky, leaving only dim moonlight filtering through the gaps. In the distance, I hear the mournful call of an owl in the old oak forest, the wind whistling through thatched roofs, and occasionally a dog barking from a neighbor's house. Inside our small cottage, the fire in the hearth has nearly died out, leaving only glowing red embers. The dim orange light shines on walls made of rough wood and clay, creating gently dancing shadows. The smell of wood smoke still lingers in the air, mixed with the scent of dry straw and warm breath from our family lying close together. It's about 8 p.m. by modern reckoning, but for us in those days, it had long been time for sleep. Sunset was the signal for our first sleep, what we called first sleep, or dead sleep. I lay down on the hard straw mattress, pulling the rough woolen blanket over myself. Beside me was my wife, Agnes, and our two small children nestled between us for warmth. The steady breathing of the little ones, the wind outside, and the scurrying of mice in the walls, all created the symphony of a medieval night. The first sleep usually lasted about 4 hours. The strange thing was that after that, we would naturally wake up. Not because of illness or worry, but that was our body's natural biological rhythm. Around midnight to 2 a.m., the whole family would slowly open our eyes, no one feeling tired or irritated. This was the time we called the watch, the vigil time. I gently pushed the blanket aside, careful not to wake the children. Agnes also woke up, her eyes in the small firelight still bright and alert. Without a word, we understood each other through our gazes. This was the private time for husband and wife, time to do things that couldn't be done during the day. I stood up, slowly walked to the hearth, adding a few dry sticks to make the fire flare up. The crackling sound of burning would create a warm sound, the dancing flames making the whole room brighter. Agnes sat up, took her spindle and began drawing thread, delicate work that needed light and concentration, impossible to do when children were running around. While she worked, I went outside to check on the chickens and pig. The winter night was freezing cold, my breath forming white puffs of mist. Moonlight shone down on the dirt yard, creating long shadows from the fence and cottage. The sound of dry grass crunching underfoot, the soft clucking of chickens in their coop when they heard someone. I checked the coop door, making sure no foxes or weasels had broken in. Returning home, I found Agnes had prepared a bowl of warm porridge from leftover barley from the evening. We sat by the fire, eating in silence, occasionally exchanging a few quiet words about tomorrow's work. This was also when I could repair work tools, mend nets, sharpen knives, or do other handicrafts that required concentration. What was special about this watch time was the intimacy between husband and wife. without interference from children, field work, or neighbors. In the small firelight, we talked about dreams, plans for the crop season, or simply sat together in peace. This was also the time when couples were intimate with each other. Doctors and marriage manuals of that time all believed this was the ideal moment, when the body had rested but the mind was still alert. Some nights we spent this time in prayer. Agnes would whisper familiar prayers, while I silently reflected on the day past and asked God to bless our family. The firelight danced on our faces, creating a sense of sacredness and peace. About 1 to 2 hours later, drowsiness would return. Not heavy fatigue but a gentle feeling like a soft wave. We would lie down again, this time for second sleep. The second sleep lasting until the rooster crowed to announce dawn. The second sleep was usually deeper and more peaceful. No tortured dreams or worries. The body had been rested, the mind refreshed through the nighttime waking period. When we woke in the morning, we felt refreshed and full of energy for a new day of work. The interesting thing was that not only farming families like ours slept this way. From monks and monasteries to nobles and castles, everyone followed this natural biological rhythm. Monks even had a special name for waking in the middle of the night. They called it matins, the most sacred prayer time of the day. Literature of that time also often mentioned two-phase sleep as something normal. Chaucer in Canterbury Tales wrote about characters waking during the watch to do private things. Shakespeare also had many passages describing characters waking in the middle of the night not from insomnia, but because it was natural habit. But why did people of old sleep this way? The main reason was natural light. Without electric lights, candles were expensive and dangerous, so people lived according to the rhythm of the sun. When it got dark, the body automatically produced melatonin and entered sleep. After 4 to 5 hours, melatonin levels naturally decreased, causing people to wake up. This was exactly how the human body had evolved over thousands of years. Modern scientists have proven that when people are allowed to live in environments without artificial light, they automatically return to this two-phase sleep pattern. This means that the medieval way of sleeping might be the most natural for our bodies. The watch time also brought enormous psychological benefits. It was the quietest time of the day without work pressure or social demands. Many people used this time for reflection, meditation, or simply enjoying the silence. In our modern world full of noise and stress, perhaps we have lost this precious gift. The two-phase sleep pattern only began to disappear during the Industrial Revolution, when gas lights and later electric lights became common. Factories needed workers to work fixed shifts, unable to rest in the middle of the night. Gradually, society imposed the 8-hour continuous sleep model we know today. But perhaps sometimes, when you wake up at 2 to 3 a.m. and don't feel tired, instead of worrying about insomnia, you could try enjoying this watch time. Reading, meditating, or simply lying quietly in the darkness and feeling the peace of the late night. Maybe that's exactly the call of your ancestral instincts. Are you lying on your comfortable bed right now? Feel the softness of the mattress, the warmth of your blanket, and the comfort we often take for granted. Now, let me take you back to an era when bed had a completely different meaning. I am Eleanor, daughter of a carpenter in the town of Winchester, England, in the spring of 1456. That morning, sunlight filtered through the small window made of oiled paper, creating golden stripes on the packed earth floor. Outside, sparrows chirped cheerfully on the blooming apple tree branch, the sound of my father's hammer from the workshop below, and the laughter of children running on the cobblestone street. My family belonged to the artisan class, not wealthy but not as poor as peasants. But even with this relatively stable social position, our bed was still something modern people could hardly imagine. The family bedroom had only one small window, not with glass but just a thin sheet of oiled paper that could be rolled up when light was needed. On the dirt floor were spread layers of dry straw for insulation and warmth. In the corner of the room, 2 rough wooden frames made by my father's hands, one for my parents, one for me and my 2 younger siblings. The wooden frame had no springs or mattress like today. Instead, wooden planks were joined together to form a flat surface, on which was placed a large cloth sewn from rough linen. This cloth was stuffed full of dry wheat straw. That was our mattress. The smell of dry straw, mixed with fresh wood and a bit of musty dampness from the earthen walls, created the characteristic scent of a medieval home. Every few months we had to replace the straw. This was work for the whole family, taking out all the old straw, washing the cloth cover clean and stuffing new straw in. I still remember the itchy feeling of dry straw pieces when we stuffed them tightly into the cloth. Sometimes there were even wheat grains mixed in, creating unexpectedly hard spots when lying down. Straw wasn't just hard and uncomfortable, but also home to countless tiny creatures. Field mice regularly made nests in the straw, creating small rustling sounds at night. Fleas and lice also considered this paradise, reproducing freely. I had gotten used to waking up with itchy bites all over my body, and the whole family had the habit of regularly scratching our heads and bodies. But straw was still considered the best choice for our class. It was cheap, easy to find, and most importantly kept warm well. On cold winter nights, the thick layer of straw would retain body heat, creating a cozy space. And though uncomfortable, it was still much better than lying directly on the cold earthen floor. For poorer farming families, they didn't even have wooden frames. Their beds were simply a pile of straw spread directly on the floor, possibly wrapped in a rough cloth if they were lucky. I had seen such families, the whole household lying together on one large straw pile, children squeezed between parents for warmth. Families with slightly better means might have mattresses made from animal hair. Sheep's wool was most common, much softer than straw and less attractive to insects. Wealthy families might even have mattresses of goose or duck down, an unimaginable luxury for people like us. Bed sheets were also an alien concept. We lay directly on the cloth of the straw mattress, or might spread a rough linen cloth if we had one. Pillows were a luxury item. Instead, we used small cloth bags stuffed with straw, or simply rolled up clothes to make pillows. Blankets were sewn from sheep's wool or linen, usually very rough and stiff. Colors were mostly natural brown-gray, as dyes were expensive and hard to find. We usually only had 1 or 2 blankets for the whole family, so sharing and crowding was normal. The interesting thing was how beds were arranged in the family. Parents lay in the middle, me and my siblings on either side. This wasn't just for warmth but also for protection. Children were sheltered between the adults. On particularly cold nights, sometimes even the house dog was allowed on the bed to serve as a living warming pan. Sleep rules in the family were very strict. We always slept fully clothed. There was no concept of separate sleepwear. Daytime clothes were nighttime clothes. My mother always reminded us to lie straight, hands along our sides, legs not stretched out but slightly bent. This was considered the proper and respectful sleeping position. Before getting into bed, there was a small ritual that the whole family followed. We would kneel beside the bed, pray together, asking God to protect us through the night and forgive the day's mistakes. Then each person would make the sign of the cross on their forehead before lying down. The sounds of night in a medieval house were very special. Wind blowing through wall cracks, mice running in the walls, sniffling from people with colds, and sometimes the soft crying of children. But there were also peaceful sounds. The steady breathing of sleeping people, small fire crackling in the hearth, and silent prayers. For the nobility, the situation was completely different. I once went into the local castle with my father when he was delivering goods. The Lord's bed was a masterpiece, an intricately carved wooden frame, thick soft down mattress, silk sheets and velvet curtains. The 4 bedposts could reach to the ceiling, with curtains that could be drawn to create private space. But even with noble families, sharing beds was still common. Distinguished guests might be invited to share the host's bed as a special honor. Noble children often slept with their parents until adulthood, and even trusted servants might sleep at the foot of the bed to serve when needed. Changing bed linens didn't happen as frequently as today. Most people only washed sheets a few times a year, usually on special occasions like Easter or Christmas. Body odor, sweat, and other smells created the distinctive fragrance of each bed. One of the biggest challenges of medieval sleeping was temperature. In winter, even with thick blankets and sleeping together, we still often woke up with chattering teeth and stiff bodies. Summer was the opposite. Straw and wool created a hot, suffocating environment, especially when the whole family crowded on one small bed. Bedtime habits were also very different. No electric lights for reading books, no other entertainment. When it got dark, the only thing to do was talk quietly, pray or tell stories. My father often told stories about saints, ancient legends, or his experiences in carpentry. Our sleep was often interrupted. Not just from insect bites or animal noises, but also from constant worries about illness, weather and precarious life. Every cough, every strange sound at night could wake the whole family. But perhaps the most surprising thing was that we were used to and satisfied with these rough beds. That was all we knew, and the warmth from sleeping with family somewhat compensated for the physical discomfort. Beds weren't just places to sleep, but also places to give birth, care for the sick, and sometimes even to die. Looking back, I realized that those simple straw beds taught us something valuable that perhaps modern comfort has made us forget, that warmth and security don't come from luxury, but from being close to those we love. In our crowded, uncomfortable bed, we learn to care for each other, to share not just space but also dreams and fears. The bed was the center of family life, where stories were told, where prayers were said, where comfort was given during illness, and where new life began. It might have been rough and filled with straw, but it was filled with love, and perhaps that made it more valuable than any luxury mattress. I hope you're feeling more relaxed now, perhaps pulling your comfortable blanket a bit higher. Let me take you to understand how people in the Middle Ages dressed for sleep, not for comfort or style, but purely for survival. I am Margaret, a merchant's wife in the bustling town of York, England, during the harsh winter of 1398. Outside our timber-framed house, snow falls steadily, each flake catching the dim light from our horn-paned windows. The wind howls through the narrow streets, rattling shutters and sending icy drafts through every crack and crevice of our home. Inside, despite our relatively comfortable circumstances, the cold seems to seep through stone walls as if they were mere cloth. Tonight, as every night, the ritual of preparing for sleep begins not with removing clothes, but with adding more. You see, in our time, undressing for bed would be tantamount to inviting death. Our homes, even the finest ones, offer little protection against winter's bite. The great fireplace in our main hall has long since burned down to embers, and the smaller brazier in our sleeping chamber provides only a small circle of warmth. I begin by checking young Thomas, my 6-year-old son, ensuring his woolen tunic is properly fastened and his hose are secure. His little hands are already cold despite the fire, and I rub them gently between mine. My husband, Robert, sits on the edge of our wooden bed frame, pulling on an additional pair of woolen stockings over the ones he's already wearing. The practical nature of our evening preparations would seem strange to future generations, but for us, it's a matter of life and death. The most important item in our nighttime attire is the nightcap. Not the tiny decorative thing some might imagine, but a substantial woolen head covering that extends down to cover our ears and neck. Mine is made from thick gray wool, knitted by my own hands during long winter evenings. It's cone-shaped, ending in a long tail that I wrap around my neck for extra warmth. Robert's is similar but larger, and young Thomas has a smaller version in brown wool. These caps aren't just about warmth, though that's their primary function. We lose more heat through our heads than any other part of our body, and in a world where central heating means a dog sleeping at your feet, every bit of retained warmth matters. But the caps also serve a social purpose. A covered head while sleeping is considered modest and proper, bare heads are for the very poor or the immodest. The process of putting on my nightcap is almost ceremonial. First, I ensure my hair is properly braided and pinned close to my head. Loose hair can become tangled and matted during the night, and morning preparations are difficult enough without dealing with a bird's nest of hair. Then I place the cap carefully, adjusting it so it covers my ears completely and ties securely under my chin. The wool feels scratchy against my skin, but it's a good kind of roughness, the kind that means warmth and protection. Our night shirts are equally practical. Made from thick linen or wool, they reach nearly to our ankles and have long sleeves that extend past our wrists. These aren't garments designed for beauty or comfort, but for keeping as much body heat as possible contained. Robert's nightshirt is a natural off-white color, while mine is a deeper brown colors chosen not for fashion but because they hide dirt and wear better than lighter shades. Under our nightshirts, we wear our regular day clothes. The idea of special sleeping garments is foreign to us. Why would we own separate clothes just for sleeping when good fabric is so precious? Instead, we simply add layers. Thomas wears his woolen tunic, linen shirt, and hose to bed, just as he wore them during the day. Over this goes his nightshirt, creating multiple layers of insulation. Our feet require special attention. We wear thick woolen socks, often 2 pairs, and sometimes wrap our feet in additional strips of cloth. Robert, being a merchant who can afford such luxuries, even has leather slippers lined with rabbit fur that he wears in bed. These aren't removed until morning, and even then only reluctantly. The fabrics we wear to bed tell the story of our social position. The wealthy might have night garments made from fine wool or even silk imported from distant lands. The poor make do with rough spun wool or linen that's been mended so many times it's more patched than original fabric. But regardless of quality, the principle remains the same: cover every inch of skin possible. Preparing children for bed requires extra care. Little bodies lose heat quickly, and a cold child is often a sick child. Thomas wears what seems like an endless collection of layers: a linen undergarment, a woolen tunic, thick hose, a nightshirt, and his cap. Sometimes, on the coldest nights, I even wrap him in an additional small blanket before putting him into the big bed with us. The colors and decorations of our nightwear also carry meaning. Wealthy families might have nightcaps embroidered with religious symbols or family crests. These aren't just decorative, they're prayers made visible, protecting the wearer through the dangerous hours of darkness. My own cap has a small cross embroidered in white thread near the forehead, a reminder that we sleep under God's protection. Women's nightwear includes additional considerations. Married women like myself are expected to keep our heads covered at all times, even while sleeping. This is both a religious requirement and a social one. Uncovered hair on a married woman is considered immodest and potentially sinful. Our nightcaps, therefore, are never removed, not even in the privacy of our own beds. The process of getting dressed for bed also includes checking for wear and tear. Clothing is too valuable to ignore holes or loose seams. Each evening, I examine every garment for damage, making mental notes of repairs needed. A small hole in a nightshirt could let in deadly cold drafts, so even minor damage requires immediate attention. Wealthy households might have servants to help with the complicated process of nighttime dressing, but for families like ours, it's a family affair. Robert and I help each other with ties and fastenings that are difficult to reach, and we both work together to ensure Thomas is properly prepared for the night. These moments of mutual care create intimacy and bonding that goes beyond mere survival. Our night clothes also serve as indicators of the seasons. In summer, we might remove one layer of day clothes before adding our night garments, but the nightcap remains. Summer nights can be surprisingly cool, and morning dew makes early rising uncomfortable without proper head covering. Winter requires every piece of fabric we own. The wealthy often change their night clothes weekly, while common folk might wear the same night garments for weeks or even months. Laundry is a difficult, time-consuming process, especially in winter when clothes must dry indoors and often remain damp for days. The smell of our night clothes becomes part of the familiar scent of home wool, wood smoke, herbs used for pest control, and the honest scent of human life. Religious considerations also influence our nighttime attire. Many garments are blessed by the local priest, and we believe that wearing blessed clothes while sleeping provides additional protection against demons and evil spirits that roam the night. Some nightcaps even contain small relics or holy medallions sewn into the fabric. The most interesting aspect of medieval nightwear is how it reflects our understanding of the body and health. We believe that sudden temperature changes can be deadly, so the gradual warming provided by multiple layers is essential. We also think that certain parts of the body, the head, neck, and feet, are particularly vulnerable to night vapors and evil influences, so these require extra protection. Removing night clothes in the morning is almost as ritualized as putting them on. We don't simply strip off garments, but carefully remove them layer by layer, allowing our bodies to adjust gradually to the day's temperature. The nightcap is often the last thing removed, after we've fully dressed for the day's activities. Looking back on these rituals now, I realize they were about more than just staying warm. They were about creating a sense of security and order in a chaotic world. When disease, war, and hunger could strike without warning, the simple act of properly preparing for sleep became a way of asserting control over our lives. Every layer, every tie, every carefully placed cap was a small act of defiance against a world that seemed determined to destroy us. Our night clothes were armor against the cold, protection against illness, and symbols of our determination to survive another night and see another dawn. How comfortable does your private bed feel right now? The space that's entirely yours, where no unexpected stranger will suddenly appear beside you. Let me take you to a world where such privacy was not just rare but completely unthinkable. I am Edmund, a traveling wool merchant from Winchester, and tonight finds me at the Crown Inn in the market town of Salisbury on a cold October evening in 1485. Rain has been falling steadily since midday, turning the roads into rivers of mud and making further travel impossible. The inn's common room glows with firelight and echoes with conversation in half a dozen languages. Other merchants like myself, pilgrims bound for Canterbury, a knight with his squire, and farmers who've come to town for market day. The innkeeper, a stout woman named Goodwife Alice, wipes her hands on her apron as she surveys her guests. Her inn is prosperous by medieval standards, 2 stories of timber and stone, with glazed windows and sturdy doors. But prosperity doesn't mean privacy. As the evening grows late and the last of the ale is consumed, she begins the nightly ritual of bed assignment. "Master Edmund," she calls to me, "you'll share the merchant bed with Master Geoffrey there." She points to a thin man in his 40s who's been calculating accounts on a small wooden tablet. The knight and his squire take the noble bed. Pilgrims in the pilgrim chamber and farmers. She gestures to a group of mud-splattered men, the common sleeping hall. This arrangement seems perfectly natural to everyone present. The idea that each person might require their own sleeping space is not just impractical, it's incomprehensible. Beds are expensive to build and maintain, space is limited, and body heat is precious. Why would anyone want to sleep alone when shared warmth means the difference between a comfortable night and a miserable one? Master Geoffrey nods politely as we're introduced. He's a cloth merchant from London, his hands soft from handling fine fabrics rather than rough wool like mine. We discuss our respective trades briefly, establishing that neither of us snores excessively, talks in his sleep, or has any obvious diseases. These conversations are standard etiquette. You want to know something about the person who'll be sharing your sleeping space. The merchant bed is located in a small chamber on the inn's upper floor. It's a substantial piece of furniture, a wooden frame nearly 6 feet wide, with a feather mattress that's a luxury I rarely enjoy at home. The bed is dressed with linen sheets that, while not perfectly clean by modern standards, are certainly cleaner than the rough woolen blankets I'm accustomed to. 2 bolster pillows rest at the head, and heavy woolen blankets are folded at the foot. As we prepare for sleep, Geoffrey and I follow the unspoken rules of bed sharing. We each take one side of the bed, removing only our outer garments, doublets, hose and shoes. Our linen shirts and braids remain on, providing both modesty and an extra layer of warmth. I notice Geoffrey carries a small knife, which he places carefully within reach. This isn't unusual, travelers sleep with their valuables and weapons close at hand. The routine of shared sleeping has its own etiquette. You don't thrash about, you don't steal blankets, and you certainly don't encroach on your companion's side of the bed. If you need to get up during the night for the chamber pot or simply to stretch your legs, you move carefully and quietly. Disturbing your bedfellow's sleep is considered extremely rude. Geoffrey proves to be an ideal sleeping companion. He settles on his side of the bed, pulls his portion of the blankets up to his chin, and within minutes is breathing steadily in sleep. I lie awake a bit longer, listening to the sounds of the inn settling for the night. From the chamber next to ours comes the murmur of the knight speaking quietly to his squire. Below us, in the common sleeping hall, I can hear the rustling and occasional cough of the farmers and other common travelers. The walls of medieval inns are thin, and privacy is a concept that barely exists. Conversations, snoring, and other bodily functions are all shared experiences. Someone in a nearby chamber has a persistent cough, and from the stable comes the occasional whinny of horses and the sound of the stable boy checking on the animals. But there's something comforting about these shared sounds. In a world full of dangers, bandits on the roads, disease, political upheaval, the presence of other people provides safety. If something goes wrong during the night, you're not alone. If you fall ill, someone will notice. If thieves attempt to break in, there are others to raise the alarm. Morning comes early in medieval inns, announced by the crowing of roosters and the sounds of the kitchen staff beginning their day. Geoffrey and I wake naturally as dawn light filters through the oiled paper covering our small window. We dress sufficiently, each man keeping to his own side of the bed, then join the other guests in the common room for breakfast. The meal, barley porridge, bread, and small beer, gives us a chance to hear each other's travel plans. Geoffrey is heading north toward York, while I'm bound west toward Bristol. We'll likely never see each other again, but for one night we shared the intimacy of sleep without it meaning anything more than practical necessity. Not all bed-sharing arrangements are so pleasant. I remember one terrible night at a rough inn near Durham, where I was forced to share with a man who clearly hadn't bathed in weeks and who thrashed about all night, muttering in his sleep and occasionally crying out. By morning I was exhausted and resolved to pay extra for a private space next time. Though even private usually meant sharing with only one person instead of 2 or 3. The worst situations occur when inns are overcrowded. During important market days or religious festivals, beds might hold 3 or even 4 travelers. I once spent a miserable night squeezed between a snoring farmer and a feverish pilgrim, getting perhaps 2 hours of actual sleep. The farmer smelled of manure and sweat, the pilgrim tossed and turned constantly, and I spent most of the night pressed against the wall trying to claim a few inches of space. Women travelers face additional challenges. Reputable inns try to provide separate sleeping arrangements for women, but this isn't always possible. When male and female travelers must share space, strict rules apply: married couples together, single women in groups, and clear separation from single men. Violations of these rules can result in serious social consequences or even legal action. The social hierarchy of medieval society is clearly visible in sleeping arrangements. Knights and nobles get the best beds in private chambers. Wealthy merchants like myself get decent beds shared with one other person. Common merchants and craftsmen might share with 2 others, and laborers and poor travelers sleep in common halls on straw mattresses. Payment for lodging reflects this hierarchy too. A private chamber, actually shared with only one other person, might cost 4 pence, a significant sum when a laborer earns only a few pence per day. Shared beds cost 2 pence, and a place on a straw mattress in the common hall might be only a single penny. Most travelers choose based on their purse rather than their preference. Innkeepers have their own strategies for managing bed assignments. They try to match travelers of similar social class and cleanliness standards. Merchants with merchants, pilgrims with pilgrims, and so forth. They also watch for signs of disease. Anyone with a fever, persistent cough, or suspicious rash might be refused accommodation entirely, or relegated to sleeping in the stable. Personal belongings present special challenges in shared sleeping arrangements. Valuables must be kept close to your body, coins in a pouch tied around your waist, important documents in an inner pocket, and small trade goods in a bag used as a pillow. I've learned to sleep lightly, alert to any movement that might indicate someone is trying to access my belongings. The intimacy of shared sleeping creates temporary bonds between strangers. You learn things about people that their families might not know: who snores, who talks in their sleep, who tosses and turns. You might hear someone praying quietly in the darkness, or catch fragments of dreams spoken aloud. These glimpses into other people's private selves create a strange kind of temporary intimacy. Some travelers become regular companions on the road circuit. If you travel the same routes frequently, you begin to recognize other regular travelers, and bed-sharing arrangements can become almost familial. Master Geoffrey and I, for instance, have encountered each other at inns 3 times over the past 2 years, and we've developed an easy companionship during our shared nights. Regional variations in culture also affect sleeping arrangements. In northern England and Scotland, where winters are harsh, bed sharing is so common that travelers often sleep 3 or 4 to a bed without anyone thinking it unusual. In warmer southern regions or during summer months, some inns provide individual straw mattresses and shared chambers, allowing a bit more personal space. The practice of bed sharing has created its own social codes and courtesies. You learn to dress and undress discreetly, to manage personal needs without disturbing others, and to respect the invisible boundaries that mark your portion of shared space. These skills become second nature to regular travelers, and the lack of them immediately marks someone as inexperienced or lowborn. Looking back on decades of travel and hundreds of shared nights, I realize that this practice taught me things about human nature that I might never have learned otherwise. I've shared beds with scholars and farmers, knights and beggars, priests and merchants. I've learned that beneath the differences of class and education, we all sleep much the same way, seeking warmth, safety, and rest for the challenges of tomorrow. The bed-sharing culture of medieval inns wasn't just about saving space or money, it was about recognizing our fundamental human need for companionship and safety. In a dangerous world where travel was perilous and solitude could be deadly, the simple act of sleeping near another person was a form of mutual protection and comfort that we've perhaps lost in our modern pursuit of privacy. I hope the stories so far have helped ease you into that comfortable drowsiness that comes with the late hour. Let me now take you into the most disciplined sleeping environment of the medieval world, the monastery dormitory, where even rest was a form of worship. I am Brother Augustine, a young monk in my 3rd year at the Cistercian Abbey of Rievaulx in Yorkshire, England. It is the winter of 1389, and tonight, as every night, the bell tower chimes the end of Compline, the final prayer service of our day. The great bell's bronze voice echoes across the snow-covered valley, signaling that the great silence has begun, a time when no words may be spoken until dawn breaks over our community. Our dormitory is a long, narrow hall built of gray Yorkshire stone, with a vaulted ceiling that soars 30 feet above our heads. 20 wooden beds line each wall, 40 beds in total, each identical in its austere simplicity. The temperature inside differs little from the icy air outside. Our rule forbids the comfort of heated sleeping quarters, as such luxury would soften the soul and weaken our resolve in service to God. My bed, like all the others, consists of nothing more than a wooden frame supporting a thin straw mattress and a single woolen blanket. There is no pillow. We sleep with our heads resting on the hard straw, using our folded robes as minimal cushioning if needed. The bed is so narrow that turning over requires careful coordination to avoid falling onto the stone floor below. As we file silently into the dormitory, our breath forms small clouds in the frigid air. Brother Marcus, the eldest among us at nearly 60 years, moves slowly to his bed at the far end of the hall, his joints stiff from decades of this harsh lifestyle. Brother David, barely 18 and still adjusting to monastic life, shivers violently as he approaches his bed near the great windows that let in moonlight and winter wind alike. We sleep fully clothed as our rule dictates. The notion of special sleeping garments is considered a worldly vanity that has no place in our lives of devoted poverty. Our rough woolen habits, leather belts, and sandals remain on our bodies through the night, partly for warmth, but primarily because we must be ready to rise instantly when the bell calls us to matins, the midnight prayer service. The process of lying down follows strict protocol established by centuries of monastic tradition. We each stand beside our beds and silently recite a personal prayer of gratitude for the day's blessings and a plea for protection through the night's dangers. Then, with deliberate movements that create no unnecessary sound, we lower ourselves onto our hard beds and arrange our single blankets. Brother Timothy, who sleeps in the bed next to mine, struggles nightly with the cold. His thin frame seems unable to generate enough warmth to make the inadequate blanket effective, and I can hear his teeth chattering softly in the darkness. But our rule forbids sharing blankets or offering physical comfort. Each monk must endure his trials in solitude, finding strength through personal communion with God rather than human companionship. The sounds of our dormitory settling for sleep are unlike anything in the secular world. There is no conversation, no rustling of pages, no comfortable sighs or shifting for better positions. Instead, there is only the whisper of rough fabric against straw, the soft footsteps of the few brothers still finding their beds, and the ever-present sound of wind howling through the stone walls. Sleep comes slowly and fitfully in such conditions. The cold seeps through our thin blankets and rough habits, making true rest nearly impossible. My feet, despite the leather sandals, feel like blocks of ice within minutes of lying down. The straw mattress provides no comfort for my spine, and every small movement creates rustling sounds that seem thunderous in the enforced silence. But perhaps the greatest challenge to sleep is not physical discomfort, but spiritual discipline. We are taught that too much comfort in sleep leads to sinful dreams and weakened resolve. The harsh conditions of our beds are intentional. They keep our bodies reminded of our mortality and our souls focused on higher purposes than mere physical ease. Brother William, a veteran of 15 years in our community, has learned to sleep in a half-sitting position, his back against the stone wall. He discovered years ago that lying flat made him susceptible to dreams that disturbed his spiritual equilibrium. By sleeping upright, he maintains better control over his mind and can wake more quickly when duty calls. The night watchman, Brother Jerome, moves silently through our dormitory every hour, carrying a small lantern that casts dancing shadows on the walls. His role is to ensure that all brothers are present and to watch for signs of illness or distress. Sometimes he pauses beside a bed where someone is clearly struggling with the cold or discomfort, but our rule prevents him from offering any assistance beyond a silent blessing. Around midnight, the bell begins to toll for matins, and our brief and uncomfortable rest comes to an end. We must rise immediately, regardless of how little sleep we have achieved, and file silently to the chapel for an hour of prayer and psalm singing. The brother whose task it is to ring the bell moves through the dormitory with a wooden clapper, gently touching each bed to ensure everyone wakes. The process of rising is as disciplined as everything else in our lives. No groaning, no stretching, no complaints about aching bones or insufficient rest. We stand beside our beds, quickly arrange our habits and belts, and form a silent procession toward the chapel. Brother David often struggles with this midnight rising, swaying slightly from exhaustion, but the discipline never varies. In the chapel, we stand in our assigned places and begin the ancient prayers and chants that have echoed through this space for centuries. The cold stone floor chills our feet through our sandals, and the unheated chapel offers no relief from the night's bitter cold. Some brothers sway from fatigue, others struggle to keep their voices steady through chattering teeth, but the service continues for precisely 1 hour. After matins, we return to our beds for what is called the second sleep. The remaining hours until dawn breaks and the day's first service, lauds, begins our active day. This second sleep is often even more difficult than the first, as our bodies are now thoroughly chilled from standing in the freezing chapel, and the knowledge that dawn is approaching makes rest seem futile. Brother Francis, who joined our community after serving as a soldier, sometimes mutters in his sleep during this second rest period. His dreams are filled with battles and conflicts from his worldly past, and occasionally he cries out, disturbing the silence of the dormitory. When this happens, Brother Jerome approaches and places a gentle hand on his shoulder, offering a silent blessing that usually calms the troubled dreams. The physical toll of our sleeping arrangements becomes evident in various ways. Many brothers develop persistent coughs from the cold and dampness. Others suffer from joint pain that worsens with each passing year. Brother Stephen, now in his 7th year with us, has developed a tremor in his hands that he attributes to decades of sleeping without adequate warmth. Yet we are taught to view these physical hardships as gifts rather than burdens. Each ache, each sleepless hour, each moment of discomfort is an opportunity to join our sufferings with those of Christ, to purify our souls through voluntary poverty and deprivation. The harder our beds, the softer our hearts should become toward divine love. Seasonal variations bring different challenges to our austere sleeping arrangements. Summer nights offer blessed relief from the crushing cold, but they bring their own problems. The woolen habits that barely keep us warm in winter become stifling in hot weather, and the close quarters of 40 men in one unventilated hall create an oppressive atmosphere. During the longest winter nights, when darkness lasts for 14 hours or more, the brief period between Compline and Matins feels impossibly short. We barely have time to achieve any real rest before the bell summons us again to prayer. These nights test our endurance to its limits and remind us that our commitment to God requires sacrifices that the world outside these walls could never understand. Illness in the dormitory presents special challenges. When Brother Paul developed a fever last month, he was moved to our small infirmary, but not before spending several nights struggling with chills and cough in his regular bed. Our rule requires that we maintain our normal sleeping arrangements unless illness becomes severe enough to threaten life. The mental discipline required for monastic sleeping is perhaps even more demanding than the physical endurance. We must train our minds to find peace and rest despite discomfort, to offer our sleeplessness as prayer, and to wake with gratitude rather than resentment when the bell calls us from our inadequate rest. Brother Matthew, our dormitory superior, reminds us regularly that our beds are not meant to be havens of comfort but schools of virtue. Each night spent in discomfort, each morning risen without adequate sleep, strengthens our souls for the greater challenges of spiritual warfare against sin and temptation. The dreams that come to us in our austere dormitory are often more vivid and significant than those of men who sleep in comfort. Perhaps the discomfort keeps our minds in a heightened state that makes us more receptive to divine communication. Brother Lawrence frequently receives guidance through dreams about our community's needs, and Brother Peter claims that his most profound spiritual insights come during the brief moments of sleep between matins and lauds. New brothers often struggle most with the sleeping arrangements, and we watch them carefully during their first months. Brother Andrew, who joined us 6 months ago from a prosperous merchant family, still winces visibly when lowering himself onto his hard bed each night. But gradually, we see him developing the inner strength that allows him to endure and even find peace in circumstances that once seemed impossible. The solidarity that develops among men who share such harsh sleeping conditions creates bonds stronger than family ties. We suffer together in silence, support each other through unspoken gestures, and find in our common endurance a fellowship that transcends words. When Brother Edmund died in his sleep last winter, we mourn not just the loss of a holy man, but the absence of a companion who had shared 10,000 nights of disciplined suffering with us. As I lie here now on my narrow bed, listening to the breathing of my sleeping brothers and feeling the cold seep through my thin blanket, I reflect on the strange mercy of this harsh life we have chosen. In the world outside these walls, men pursue comfort and ease, believing these will bring happiness. But we have learned that true peace comes not from external comfort but from internal surrender to God's will. The bell will ring again in a few hours, calling us from whatever rest we manage to find, and we will rise immediately to serve the God who calls us to this life of voluntary hardship. Until then, we rest as we can, offering our discomfort as prayer and finding in our austere beds a strange kind of contentment that the comfortable world will never understand. The night grows deeper around you now, and I hope you're feeling that comfortable heaviness in your eyelids. But let me tell you about a time when unusual sleep behaviors were seen not as medical conditions, but as supernatural visitations. I am Father Benedict, parish priest of the small village of Ashford in Kent, England, in the year 1456. Tonight, I have been summoned from my warm bed in the rectory to deal with what the villagers believe is a case of demonic possession, but which I suspect might be something far more natural, if equally mysterious. The autumn wind howls through the bare branches of the oak trees surrounding the cottage of Thomas the miller, creating sounds that would frighten even the bravest soul on a night like this. Inside the small dwelling, lit only by the flickering flames of rushlights and a dying fire, the miller's family huddles together in fear and confusion, watching their 15-year-old son Martin as he moves about the room with eyes wide open but seeing nothing. Martin began his strange nighttime wanderings 3 weeks ago, shortly after the first frost. His mother, good wife Alice, tearfully explains how the boy rises from his straw mattress in the middle of the night, walks about the cottage touching objects and mumbling words that make no sense, sometimes even attempting to open the door and venture outside into the darkness. What terrifies the family most is that Martin's eyes remain open throughout these episodes, yet he seems to see nothing and responds to no one. As I watch the boy carefully, I notice details that suggest this might not be the work of evil spirits. Martin's movements, while strange, follow certain patterns. He reaches for tools in their usual places, touches the walls as if feeling his way, and his mumbled words, while unclear, seem to contain fragments of prayers and everyday conversations rather than the blasphemous utterances one might expect from demonic influence. The family has tried various remedies suggested by their neighbors. They've sprinkled holy water around Martin's bed, hung iron crosses above his sleeping place, and even burned herbs that are supposed to drive away evil spirits. Nothing has stopped the nighttime wanderings, and the family grows more frightened with each episode. In our time, we understand little about the workings of the mind during sleep. The learned men of the church teach that sleep is a time when the soul temporarily separates from the body, making it vulnerable to outside influences. Some believe that sleepwalking occurs when demons possess the empty body, using it for their own purposes. Others think it happens when the soul becomes lost and cannot find its way back to the sleeping form. But I have seen similar cases before, and I've begun to develop my own theories. Young Martin's behavior reminds me of Brother Augustine at the Abbey, who sometimes rises during the night offices and attempts to perform his daily duties while still asleep. In Augustine's case, we've learned to gently guide him back to his bed without waking him, and he remembers nothing in the morning. The causes of such sleep disturbances seem to vary. In some cases, they follow periods of great stress or anxiety. Martin's episodes began shortly after his younger sister died of fever, and the family has been struggling with grief and the practical difficulties of survival without her help. In other cases, I've observed that sleepwalking occurs more frequently during times of hunger or illness, when the body's natural rhythms are disturbed. Young children seem particularly susceptible to these nighttime wanderings, perhaps because their minds are still developing and their connection between soul and body is not yet firmly established. I've seen cases of children as young as 5 or 6 rising from their beds to play with imaginary companions or to help with household tasks while completely asleep. The most disturbing cases involve actions that seem purposeful but are completely unlike the person's normal behavior. Last year, I was called to assist with Matthew the blacksmith's daughter, who would rise in the night and attempt to prepare elaborate meals, grinding grain and mixing ingredients with great concentration while fast asleep. Her family was convinced she was being controlled by the spirit of her deceased grandmother, who had been known for her cooking skills. Women seem to experience different types of sleep disturbances than men. Where men might walk about touching tools or trying to perform work tasks, women often engage in domestic activities, cooking, cleaning, or caring for imaginary children. Some villages believe this represents the souls of deceased mothers trying to continue their earthly duties through the bodies of living women. The seasonal patterns of these disturbances intrigue me. Cases seem more common during the autumn and winter months, when the days are short and the nights long. Perhaps the extended darkness affects the balance of soul and body, making separation more likely. Or perhaps the stress of surviving harsh winters weakens the spiritual defenses that normally keep the soul properly anchored. Night terrors present their own challenges to our understanding. Unlike sleepwalking, which involves calm, purposeful movement, night terrors produce screaming, thrashing, and apparent battle with invisible enemies. I've seen strong men wake the entire village with their cries, fighting against demons that exist only in their sleeping minds. Young Martin's case seems to be worsening. Tonight, instead of simply walking about the cottage, he has attempted to leave the building entirely. His father had to physically restrain him to prevent him from wandering into the forest, where he might have frozen to death or fallen prey to wolves. The boy showed surprising strength during the struggle, as if some external force was driving him forward. The methods we use to treat such conditions reflect our limited understanding of their nature. Prayer is always the first response. We ask God to protect the sleeper's soul and to bind any evil spirits that might be causing the disturbance. Holy water sprinkled around the bed and burning blessed candles often provide comfort to the family, even if they don't stop the episodes. Physical restraints are sometimes necessary, though they must be used carefully. Tying a sleepwalker to their bed can cause injury if they struggle against the bonds while still asleep. Some families sleep in shifts, with one person always awake to guide the wanderers safely back to bed. This solution works but exhausts the entire household. Herbal remedies are popular, though their effectiveness seems variable. Valerian root is said to promote peaceful sleep, while lavender might calm an agitated mind. Some healers recommend placing certain stones under the pillow or wearing amulets blessed by holy men. These treatments probably work through suggestion rather than any inherent power, but if they bring comfort to suffering families, I don't discourage them. The social consequences of sleep disorders can be severe in our small communities. Families with sleepwalking members are often viewed with suspicion, as if the condition might be contagious or caused by hidden sins. Children tease the affected individuals, calling them moon-mad, or claiming they consort with spirits. Adults whisper about curses and divine punishment. Some cases resolve themselves naturally over time. Children often outgrow their nighttime wanderings as they mature, and adults who develop the condition following a traumatic event may recover as they heal emotionally. But others seem to be permanently affected, requiring lifelong vigilance to prevent harm. The most tragic cases involve those who harm themselves or others during their sleep episodes. I recall a merchant who, while sleepwalking, picked up a knife and wounded his wife, believing he was defending his home against intruders. The couple's marriage never recovered from the incident, despite everyone understanding that the man was not responsible for his actions. Prevention strategies focus mainly on spiritual protection. Regular prayer, frequent confession, and avoiding sins that might weaken the soul's connection to the body are all recommended. Maintaining a pure household, free from cursed objects or evil influences, is also considered important. The timing of sleep disturbances often follows patterns that suggest natural rather than supernatural causes. Episodes frequently occur during the deepest part of the night, usually 2 to 4 hours after falling asleep. They're more common when the sleeper is particularly tired or has been under stress. Physical illness or injury also seems to increase the likelihood of strange sleep behaviors. Children who sleepwalk often seem to be acting out their daily experiences or fears. A shepherd boy might rise and pretend to tend imaginary sheep, while a merchant's daughter might count invisible coins. This suggests that whatever force drives the behavior, it draws upon the person's own memories and experiences rather than external influences. As I prepare to leave Thomas the miller's cottage tonight, having offered what comfort and counsel I can, I reflect on how little we truly understand about the mysteries of sleep. We know that the body must rest, that dreams come to all people, and that sometimes the normal patterns are disrupted in frightening ways. But the deeper questions, why some people walk in their sleep, what causes night terrors, how the mind can be active while the body rests, remain beyond our knowledge. I've instructed the family to keep Martin safe without trying to wake him during his episodes, to maintain their prayers and faith, and to call for me if the condition worsens. Perhaps with time and patience the boy will outgrow these strange nights. Or perhaps this is a burden he'll carry throughout his life, requiring the constant vigilance and love of those who care for him. Sleep, which should be a time of peace and restoration, sometimes becomes a battlefield where mysterious forces wage war for control of the human soul. In our ignorance, we do what we can to protect those who suffer, trusting in divine mercy to guard them through the dark hours until morning brings safety and clarity once again. As our journey through the strange world of medieval sleep draws to a close, I hope you're feeling deeply relaxed and ready for your own peaceful rest. The night outside your window may be quiet and comfortable, filled with modern conveniences our medieval ancestors could never have imagined. As I reflect on these 10 tales from the sleeping chambers of the past, sitting here by candlelight in my own simple room, I'm struck by how much has changed, and how much remains eternal, in the human need for rest, warmth, and safety through the dark hours. The people whose stories we've shared tonight faced challenges we can barely imagine. They slept on beds that modern comfort would consider torture devices, sharing their space with insects, animals, and complete strangers. They wrapped themselves in rough fabrics and pointed caps, not for fashion but for survival. They approached each night with prayers and preparations for possible death, understanding sleep as a dangerous journey requiring divine protection. Yet in many ways their fundamental needs were the same as ours. They sought warmth when the world was cold, companionship when they felt alone, and peaceful rest after days of hard labor. They found comfort in familiar routines in the presence of loved ones, and in the hope that morning would bring new possibilities. The two-phase sleep pattern that seems so natural to our ancestors offers intriguing insights for our modern world. Perhaps our occasional middle-of-the-night wakings aren't signs of insomnia but echoes of an ancient rhythm. Maybe there's wisdom in accepting these quiet hours as times for reflection, intimacy, or simply peaceful coexistence with the darkness. The medieval emphasis on bedtime prayers and dream interpretation reminds us that sleep was once considered a spiritual activity, not just physical recovery. While we may not share their fears of demons and evil spirits, there's something beautiful about approaching sleep with gratitude for the day past and hope for the day to come. Their willingness to share beds and sleeping spaces speaks to a different understanding of privacy and community. Where we often sleep alone behind locked doors, they found safety and warmth in numbers. Their children grew up surrounded by the breathing of family members, their travelers found companionship with strangers, and their monks discovered brotherhood in shared discomfort. Even their struggles with pests and parasites, while unpleasant to contemplate, remind us how fortunate we are to live in an age of modern hygiene and pest control. The fact that they persevered, found happiness, and built civilizations while dealing with such constant discomfort testifies to remarkable human resilience. The stories of knights sleeping in armor and monks rising for midnight prayers show us people who understood that comfort is not always the highest value. They willingly sacrificed ease for duty, warmth for vigilance, and personal preference for communal responsibility. There's something admirable in their dedication to purposes greater than individual comfort. As you prepare for your own sleep tonight, perhaps you'll appreciate anew the miracle of your clean sheets, your comfortable mattress, your private room with its controlled temperature and electric lighting. These luxuries, which we often take for granted, would have seemed like impossible dreams to our medieval ancestors. But perhaps we can also learn from their simpler approaches to sleep. Their acceptance of natural rhythms, their gratitude for basic warmth and safety, their understanding that sleep connects us to something larger than ourselves. These insights remain valuable even in our age of memory foam and climate control. The children listening to these stories with their parents might drift off tonight with new appreciation for their comfortable beds and loving families. The adults seeking relaxation might find peace in understanding that humans have always struggled with sleep challenges, found ways to cope with discomfort, and survived to see another dawn. In our modern world of busy schedules and electronic distractions, there's something appealing about the medieval approach to nighttime, the natural surrender to darkness, the acceptance of quiet hours, the understanding that sleep is not just rest but renewal. Perhaps we've gained comfort but lost some wisdom in our journey from straw mattresses to modern bedrooms. Tonight, as you settle into your warm, safe bed, surrounded by the gentle hum of modern conveniences, remember the countless generations who came before us. They faced each night with courage, found rest. I hope the stories so far have helped ease you into that comfortable drowsiness that comes with the late hour. Let me now take you into the most disciplined sleeping environment of the medieval world, the monastery dormitory, where even rest was a form of worship. Good night.